Welcome back to Stack Shack Sports. Today we're going to be talking about the NFL playoff picture. We got one game left, and we got a lot of wild and wacky scenarios coming up. We'll have to see how it all plays out. But just as a reminder, let's look at who's clinched, and then we're going to walk through each and every scenario for every team and whether or not I think that's going to happen. So in the AFC, there are three playoff slots available. The Ravens, Dolphins, Chiefs, and Browns have all clinched playoff berth. And then in the NFC, there's only two spots available. NFC's mostly figured out, right? We got the Niners, the Cowboys, Lions, Eagles, Rams have clinched. Rams are my big winner there on the preseason bets. Feeling very good about that. And very impressed with their season. In the hunt, there's a couple of teams here. Bucks, Packers with the most likelihood according to the NFL. Then a bunch more as well. Jags, Bills, Colts, Texans, Steelers. And then we have our teams that are eliminated. Large group here. Some teams that preseason I definitely thought would make the playoffs. Teams like the Chargers. Teams like the Bengals. I think I had the Commanders making the playoffs, actually. Broncos, maybe. I don't remember. So some decent teams. They are all out of playoff contention. Mathematically eliminated. They don't have a chance. So, unfortunate for those teams. We had Chargers, coaching problems, injuries. Broncos just more injuries and benching Russell Wilson. I'll have a video about that probably tomorrow on my thoughts on that whole situation. Pretty wild. So let's look at the scenarios for teams to make the playoffs here. Shout out to NFL.com for bringing these up-to-date options. So we already know who's clinched. Talk about the Bills. Buffalo, win and you're in. Okay, if Buffalo wins, they control their own destiny. They beat the Miami Dolphins this week in Miami. They're in the playoffs. They can also still get into the playoffs with a tie, or if Pittsburgh or Jacksonville loses, or if Houston, Indianapolis ends in a tie. Now, I don't think option 4 is quite a good option, but potentially a Pittsburgh loss or a Jacksonville loss are not completely out of the question. All right, so then you have Houston, Indianapolis, and this one actually has a lot of playoff implications for other people. You're going to see Houston and Indianapolis show up in a lot of different playoff scenarios. So Houston, they actually get the AFC South title with a win and a Jacksonville loss. They could still win their division, but they can get in the playoffs, win and you're in. Okay, so Houston is one of our other win and you're in teams. Moving on to Indianapolis, they actually get the AFC South division themselves if they get a win and a Jacksonville loss, or a tie and a Jacksonville loss. Clinching playoff berth, win and you're in. This is going to be the big game. Indianapolis versus Houston. Both teams are win and you're in. So whoever wins this game is in the playoffs. One of those teams is making it. Jacksonville, they can get the division title by just winning. But they can also get into the playoffs by getting a Pittsburgh loss, a Denver loss, or a Denver tie. And Houston, Indianapolis not ending in a tie. So another win and you're in. Miami, they're already in the playoffs, but they could win the division by beating Buffalo this week. The Steelers, they need some help. They can't do it on their own. They need to win and have a Buffalo loss, win and have a Jacksonville loss, win and have the Houston-Indianapolis tie. Probably not very likely. Pittsburgh tie. Probably not very likely. Or they could get in with a Jacksonville loss and a Denver win, plus this game not ending in a tie. Kind of wild. right? It's interesting to me that Denver, they can't even get into the playoff. There's no scenario for them. But their game will affect other people getting in. So this game, Broncos Raiders, still important for playoff in the AFC. So what do I think is going to happen here in the AFC? Well, I think that the Houston Texans will beat the Indianapolis Colts. I believe in this team, the CJ Stroud-led team, the new coach, everything's moving. It just feels like they're a year. I don't think Indianapolis is going to be able to pull this off. I feel like Houston's destined for the playoffs. So I think they win. That's one of the playoff teams, and that will eliminate Indianapolis. They will not have a chance to get in. There's no scenario where they lose and still get in. So by Houston winning, they are guaranteed a playoff berth. I think Jacksonville also gets a big win for them. They get in. So there's two of the three. Two of the three slots in the AFC are gone. There's one option left. Is it going to be Pittsburgh or is it going to be Buffalo? Pittsburgh or Buffalo? Statistically, you would lean Buffalo because Buffalo can win and get in or lose and have Pittsburgh lose and still get in, right? So if both teams lose, Buffalo gets in. If both teams win, Buffalo gets in. You would also probably like the matchup of Buffalo versus Miami more than you would like Pittsburgh playing Baltimore in Baltimore. Seems a bit more of a tough challenge with how Baltimore has been playing. But it does depend on how motivated Baltimore is going to be to knock off their division rivals when they don't really have anything to play for this week. They've already clinched that first seed. They're locked in. They're good. So that's what it's going to come down to. Pittsburgh versus Baltimore's backups or Jacksonville. Playing probably the starters of Miami because Miami does still have something to play for. They're still trying to win the division title, which will get them a more favorable seed in the playoffs. Because of that, this is a very tough decision. I'm going to go Buffalo gets in. I think Buffalo finds a way to win that game. And because of that, so let's look at the NFC. Okay? The Cowboys, they already have clinched playoff berth. But Atlanta has not. So Atlanta, you got to win and have Tampa Bay lose. Pretty simple. If you're a Falcons fan, you got two things to root for, and that's your only shot. Atlanta wins, Tampa Bay loses. Okay? Again, there's only two spots in the NFC still available. Green Bay, win and you're in. Okay? Minnesota needs some help. New Orleans needs some help. Philadelphia, again, division title. We're not really talking about that right now. Seattle needs some help. Bucks, win and you're in. So there's two teams that have all the power. Tampa Bay and Green Bay. Both of those teams win and you're in. Tampa Bay is playing Carolina. I think Tampa Bay is going to win that game. So Tampa Bay is in. The question becomes, do I believe Green Bay is going to beat Chicago? Now, they get Chicago at home, which is good for them. Does Green Bay beat Chicago? Chicago's been a bit on a heater, but Chicago doesn't have a lot to play for. They can't make the playoffs. But they are playing for new contracts. Justin Fields, that defense has been playing really well recently. Does Green Bay beat Chicago? I think they do. I think Green Bay gets the win. I think Green Bay and Tampa Bay both make the playoffs. Again, if Green Bay loses, that's where chaos is going to ensue. Because you've got potentially a Minnesota team getting in. Then all hell breaks loose as far as these scenarios are concerned. Because basically every team is going to now have a shot whether they win or they lose. And there's multiple scenarios of multiple other teams need to be involved. I believe Tampa Bay gets the win and they get in as the division champs. I picked them a couple weeks ago to be the division champs. I think they're going to be. And I think Green Bay wins and gets in. That's the scenarios. It gets really wild if Green Bay doesn't win because you get a bunch of other teams going all over the place, especially Minnesota starts to really be rooting for quite the sequence of events to happen. But it could. We'll have to see. Watch the games this week. The big games to watch in the AFC, that Houston-Indianapolis game. That's going to be a great game to watch. It's a win and you're in for both teams. Definitely probably the main one to watch. If you're looking in the NFC, watch the Tampa Bay game against Carolina. That probably is going to be pretty locked up for Tampa Bay, I would assume. But this Packers-Bears game is going to be huge for the playoff implications of everybody else. Going to be pretty wild. It's going to be an exciting final Sunday. Playoffs just around the corner. College football just wrapped up. We'll talk about that probably a bit tomorrow, maybe the next day. We'll see how it works out with the Russell Wilson drama that's been going on. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, like, comment down below who you think's going to make it into the playoffs. Who do you got in each of those slots? There's 5 openings in the playoffs right now. 3 in the AFC, 2 in the NFC. What teams do you think are going to make it?